We are ready, O God, ready to hear your voice, ready to love, ready to shout with loud voices for those without their own voice, ready to love the children with our hands and our hearts. Come, Spirit of God, uphold our readiness. The passage from 1 Samuel this week continues the narrative of the child Samuel being raised in the faith community. In the third chapter, Samuel hears the voice of God. It's a passage steeped in humor and in irony, as Samuel is the one to whom God chooses to speak, but Samuel does not recognize God. And then finally, when he doesn't know what to say. On the other hand, the high priest Eli knows what to say, but he is not the one to whom God chooses to speak. I hear this narrative speaking to us today about how God's choices are often surprising. When Bill Willimon was the chaplain at Duke Divinity School, he blamed scripture stories like this one for causing the church to print out bulletins and orders of worship and bolting the pews to the floor. He says we need to make our rituals settled and fixed. We need to rely on traditions because we remember stories like this. We have a broad and deep cloud of witnesses, ordinary people who have heard their name called out of the blue. And so we know that our world can be a risky and dangerous place, what with the living God roaming about. Samuel was a child who received notice that God knew him by name, cared for him, and had a place and a need for him. What God does is pluck someone who never expected to be chosen and begins a conversation with him about what it means to be of infinite worth in the intricacy of a large and vast world. Now the boy Samuel was ministering to the Lord under Eli. The word of the Lord was rare in those days. Visions were not widespread. At the time, Eli, whose eyesight had begun to grow dim so that he could not see, was lying down in his room. The lamp of God had not yet gone out, and Samuel was lying down in the temple of the Lord, where the ark of God was. Then the Lord called, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel said, "Here I am," and ran to Eli, and said to Eli, "Here I am, for you called me." But Eli said, "I did not call. Lie down again." So he went and lay down. The Lord called again, "Samuel." Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." But Eli said, "I did not call, my son. Lie down again." Now Samuel did not yet know the Lord, and the word of the Lord had not yet been revealed to him. The Lord called Samuel again a third time, and Samuel got up and went to Eli and said, "Here I am, for you called me." Then Eli perceived that the Lord was calling the boy. Therefore Eli said to Samuel, "Go lie down, and if he calls you, you shall say, 'Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening.'" So Samuel went and lay down in his place. The Lord came and stood there, calling as before, "Samuel, Samuel." And Samuel said, "Speak, for your servant is listening." Then the Lord said to Samuel, "See, I am about to do something in Israel that will make both ears of anyone who hears of it tingle. On that day I will fulfill against Eli all that I have spoken concerning his house from beginning to end. For I have told him that I am about to punish his house forever for the iniquity that he knew, because his sons were blaspheming God, and he did not restrain them. Therefore I swear to the house of Eli that the iniquity of Eli's house shall not be expiated by sacrifice or offering forever." Samuel lay there until morning. Then he opened the doors of the house of the Lord. Samuel was afraid to tell the vision to Eli, but Eli called Samuel and said, "Samuel, my son?" Samuel said, "Here I am." And Eli said, "What was it that he told you? Do not hide it from me. May God do so to you, and more also, if you hide anything from me of all that he told you." And so Samuel told him everything and hid nothing from him. Then Eli said, "It is the Lord. Let him do what seems good to him." As Samuel grew up, the Lord was with him, and let none of his words fall to the ground. And all Israel, from Dan to Beersheba, knew that Samuel was a trustworthy prophet of the Lord. The Lord continued to appear at Shiloh, for the Lord revealed himself to Samuel at Shiloh by the word of the Lord.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Claudia, and I will be doing the children's sermon today. So this week, again, we are talking about the love of children, and I thought I would switch it up a little bit and ask people what they thought love was. Now, some of the people that I asked, I had my nieces involved in the video, and then I also asked some more people to submit what they thought love was. And since literally all of us are children of God, I thought that would be an interesting play on what love means to them. To me, what I think love is. Love to me is an emotion. It's a feeling. Sometimes it's a sense. I know I love the first time the heater comes on in the middle of the fall. And that's just a weird thing that I love. I love to go traveling. I love to go up to Put-in-Bay. I love to run. I love to be active. And of course, I love to sing and I love theater. As far as an emotion, love sometimes isn't a spoken word. Sometimes it could be a touch. Sometimes it could be a hug. Sometimes it's just the way someone looks at you. I was blessed by a beautiful relationship with my husband for 22 years, and we truly loved each other through good times and bad. And I think that is the essence of love, that regardless of what is going on, the craziness around us, especially now in this crazy time with the pandemic, that there's always someone or something that is with you. And for many of us who aren't married or are widowed or are single, our faith is what keeps us in love, because God is always with us, and that is the purest form of love. God's love for his children and God's love for us. So sit back and enjoy the responses that my nieces gave when asked what they thought love was. Hey Emma, what are we doing?
We're making cookies. Do you love making cookies?
Yes.
What do you think love is?
I think love is whatever you think you're passionate about.
Oh, that's a good answer. All right, thank you. Hi, Grace.
Hi.
How are you doing? Taking a little nap?
Yep. Mhm.
Do you love sleep? Is sleep the best thing ever?
Uh-huh.
Do you love that it's snowing outside?
No.
What else do you love?
I mean, I love a lot of things, but I like video games, yeah.
Love video games?
I love you.
You love me?
I love you, Dad.
I love you too. Mwah. Thank you, honey.
Hey, Evie, what is love?
Being able to trust someone with your secrets.
Yeah?
Uh,
What do you love?
my family and my dog.
Yeah,
My friends.
awesome.
That's basically it.
That's it? That's all you got to say about love?
That's all love is. Simple.
All right. Thanks, baby.
What does it mean to love?
So people love you.
So people love you. What does it mean when you love somebody?
It means you like somebody.
You like somebody. Are you nice to them?
Sometimes.
As we consider God's and our love for children, it makes sense to allow our hearts and minds to begin that journey by exploring our understanding of what love is. Most of us know what children are, and so much more meaningful than just to lay out a definition of what love is to find love in our own contexts, to speak of love from where we are, and to know that at its core, love is about relationships. I've heard it said that there are really only two kinds of love, our love and God's love, but God makes them both. Part of the beauty of Samuel's childhood story is that he is the recipient of so many acts of love. God's love is revealed along the way, and we are guided through his life story through the lens of the faith community in order that we might gain some understanding of what it means to be a child of God, what it means to be embraced by the love of God. Love begins for Samuel with uncertainty. He doesn't recognize that God is speaking. It also takes some support and help from others. Eli's advice guides Samuel to be able to recognize the voice of God and to receive God's message. Samuel is just a child, and yet even at that point in his life, he's chosen by God. And part of what we see is that Eli, with all his faults and his frailties, still has something to offer this child. One of the aspects of this pandemic that concerns me greatly is the extra isolation that it brings to children. Think about all the extra sets of eyes and ears that tune in to what is happening in their lives. Teachers and neighbors, police and clergy, counselors and friends and family. A new report by the Center on Poverty and Social Policy at Columbia University forecasting poverty rates during the COVID-19 crisis shows that poverty rates in the United States could reach their highest levels in 50 years due to the virus. But children could see their poverty rates rise 53%, half again the number in poverty already that exists. I mean, that number is staggering. But like much of what is going on in the world at this moment, I'm not sure what to do with it other than to know it and to heed Eli's advice. Listen for God. And when you hear a voice that speaks to creativity rather than cruelty, a voice that speaks with compassion rather than narcissism, a voice that asks what is best for all rather than what right am I entitled to, then ask for that voice to speak some more and be ready to listen some more. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. That voice may come to you in your sleep or in your dreams. It may rise up from a feeling or an intuition. It may be words overheard or a message not intended to be profound at all. It may rise up from the sight of an old woman struggling for justice or the sound of a child playfully imagining. And whether it comes to you like fully baked bread, fresh from the oven and ready to consume, or flitting by like a seed of a daffodil, take hold and ask for that voice to speak more and be ready to listen some more. God begins this relationship with Samuel and doesn't end it with a single message. It evolves over time. It's shown support and gets guidance from others who become involved. It requires some mutual trust, and it especially involves both listening and answering. Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening. It's a request that God help us to hear what has to be proclaimed. It's a conscious effort to tune out the distracting babble of billions of messages in order to be attuned to the wavelength of a sacred broadcast. In the process of suspecting you hear something God is saying, you begin to know. You only begin to know. It's on the journey where you begin to understand and develop a more full understanding. You begin to know who Jesus is as you're on the road following along and paying attention to what he's saying on the way. There have been a number of times in my life when I could not quite put a finger on why I felt the way that I did, or the reason I chose to follow one path instead of another. Some of those memories are simple moments, and others are part of long-lasting relationships. I heard a sermon story once where the pastor said that she was meeting a couple in order to plan for their wedding. One of the candidates was about 60 years old and had never been married. The pastor asked, "Why in the world would you want to get married now? You've been single for 60 years. Awkwardly, the person struggled to come up with an answer, to the point that his inability to articulate a good reason for wanting to marry this other person created a very difficult moment, which became more than a little tense. Well, the pastor changed the subject as quickly as she could, and bless their hearts, they had the wedding anyway. They were married for over 20 years when the husband became quite ill. Just a few days before he died, he said to his wife, "Remember when the minister asked me why I wanted to marry you and I didn't come up with a very good answer? Well, I like to tell him that now I know why." Have you been listening for God to offer you guidance? Have you been frustrated by the uncertainty that exists when you have decisions that need to be made without clear answers? The sage advice is to listen. And when you sense God's presence, to acknowledge it and say, "Speak, Lord, for your servant is listening." What goes unsaid, but what is easily recognized, is the message that those answers, even if they are perfectly coherent and crystal clear, often only take us one little step at a time. But the voice of God continues to speak as we continue along the way. It's a voice that allows us time to listen some more. you.